Good evening, everyone. My name is Tracy Schneider, and I want to welcome everyone tonight to our fourth in the series of Elder Law. I'm just going to take this off the screen. This program tonight will be taped, so please, I think all the microphones are muted already. The last 15 minutes are reserved for question and answer period. So I would like everyone to, if they have questions, to find my name, Tracy, in the chat, and you can ask me questions, and then I will forward the questions to the speakers, or I will ask the questions on your behalf. I will not be saying your name. So if you write your name as Joe Jones, I'm not saying Joe Jones asked, I'm just saying a gentleman is asking the question. So welcome. So Temple Emmanuel offers an array of social programs for active older adults free to the community, such as total body workout, Zumba Gold, Artful Afternoons, and L'chaim concerts, as well as we have an adult support group, a caregiver support group, and a memory cafe. If you want more information, send me a chat and send me your email address. I want to first acknowledge the Newton Senior Center for promoting this program. I want to also thank Jewish Family and Children's Services, Yachad, the Newton Parent Association for promoting this program as well tonight. Before the speakers begin, I want to acknowledge Benchmark. Benchmark is underwriting this series. Tonight we have Gina DiStefano. She's the new Director of Community Relations at Chestnut Park at Cleveland Circle in Brighton. Gina, I can't see the screen. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Gina, would you like to welcome everyone?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you for joining us for another informative presentation with Audrey Zabin and Don Friedman. As said before, my name is Gina DiStefano of Benchmark Senior Living. Benchmark Senior Living offers unmatched service across independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, and respite care options with 5 local communities, all within the Newton area. For more information about our communities or services, please reach out to me. I will enter my contact information into the chat. And without further ado, I would like to turn this over to Audrey and Don.
All right, before we begin, I'm just going to give the bios of the speakers tonight. So again, let's start with Don Friedman. Don Friedman has practiced elder and disability law with Rosenberg, Friedman, and Lee, LLP in Newton for over 40 years. He's a past board chair of the Alzheimer's Association of Massachusetts and a longtime member of Temple Emmanuel, where he's active with the Bereavement Committee, the Daily Minion, the Inclusion Committee, and the Stars of David program for Jewish adults with special needs. Our guest speaker tonight is Joni Katz, and we welcome Joni. Joni is a social worker, MSW, LICSW. She worked for the Massachusetts Department of Developmental Disabilities for 25 years, holding clinical and management positions. For the past 15 years, she has worked as a private care manager with a specialization in services for seniors and adults with disabilities. She's an active member at Temple Emmanuel and contributes to the bereavement and the social action committees. And finally, we want to welcome Audrey Zabin. She is a care manager and master's in education, licensed social worker, and she's the founder of AZA Care Management and Home Care in Boston. She's a leader in the field of care management for elders and adult disabled for over 20 years. She has served on the boards of directors for both the National and Local Aging Life Care Association, and over the years she has consulted with several leading corporations and academic institutions regarding care management as it relates to care and quality of life. She's also a member of Temple Emmanuel, and she runs a caregiver support group here with the focus of care strategies to enhance quality of life. So Dawn, Audrey, and Joan, let's get started. Tonight's topic is who will take care of my daughter after I'm gone. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad there's some. Oh, Dawn, did you want to be the first one? I'm not sure.
No, you're first. You're first.
Okay, good. We've just rehearsed this a million times, so you can see. This is quite informal, but we'll have a little presentation first, and then there'll be certainly times for question and answer. Having a child with disabilities is a lifelong challenge. Most families rise to that challenge due to the love they feel for the child. Sometimes the challenge brings families closer together, and sometimes the challenge brings a wedge between certain members. The challenge is more worrisome as the aging parents consider who will assume their role when they no longer available to do the advocacy, monitoring, mentoring, emotional and physical supports the adult has had. Good planning for this passage is necessary and is best done in small steps. Disabled children have received assistance from a variety of different agencies and programs, the alphabet of state and federal programs, which are foreign to many other parents. DDS for Department of Developmental Services, DMH for the Department of Mental Health, DPH for the Department of Public Health, MRC, Early Intervention Programs, Mass Health, Medicaid, Medicare, SSI, SSDI, IEP, ISP, Special Ed. These services are complicated and there is no one rule book to read, as many of you have experienced, or how to navigate the various systems, but state agencies offer services for those who meet the eligibility criteria. Parents have learned how to support their disabled children through grit and determination. The local school department is responsible for educating those with special needs, and this is often extended until the age of 22 in many cases. This is the time for transition planning, which is another huge step for the child and the parent to learn. Many parents seek residential services for their adult child when he or she turns 22, as it used to be an age when other children make this change. With COVID, we're not sure everything is kind of reversed right now, but currently with developmentally disabled children, most do not meet the eligibility criteria for residential support services upon turning 22, and parents must be creative for young adult children to give them the best opportunities for growth and living a full life. I do not have statistics for those disabled adult children who live at home with their parents, but it is a significant percentage. Families develop a way to support their children for some time. Health issues and other crises often catapult parents into accepting residential services from state agencies. Others soldier on and refuse to accept residential services even when offered. As parents age and think of alternative living plans for themselves, they must all consider who will be the main person or persons responsible for oversight, enrichment, medical monitoring, and other oversight of their adult disabled child. For those under the care of the Department of Developmental Disabilities, there is a service coordinator. These service coordinators or case managers now have very large caseloads, and regular visits to the day and residential programs are not required or possible. Family members and friends can communicate with service coordinators and let them know what they see at the homes of the day programs, but there must be a planning for state agencies to know what the succession will be and who the communicators who might become guardians, healthcare agents, or conservators are. It is important to think of persons who care about your disabled adult child and determine if there can be a team to help make these decisions. This would usually include other children, cousins, nieces and nephews, grandchildren, and it also is not necessary that the person be related. Being located locally is equally important, but not essential. In this digital age, there are websites, password-protected portals, which establish group discussions for those who want to get involved in the care of the person, even if they live in China or Australia. Agencies which provide support. Anyways, so that's the kind of the nutshell that we're dealing with. But what we want to discuss tonight is how you can find supports if their family members cannot. If there aren't other family members, you have no one else to do this, and also how to select who is the best person to do this. So we will be having a series of questions and we can get to that, but this is just a little background. Okay, Don.
All right, thank you. First, I want to say what a pleasure it is that how thrilled I am that you were willing to come and participate in this program. I've been in this a long time. Joan, I guess about the same length of time. And I think we met each other in both of our very early on in both of our careers.
Yeah.
She's been really a mentor for me in the sort of the non-legal side of this world, which I think is really the more important of the two. I'll get to that in a minute. But she's been a leader in this field, has gone from the disability world to the elder world in more recent years, and as a resource, a person walking that bridge between, the sort of this lifelong planning cycle for people. She really brings a unique background to this. She really underscores for me one of the major points I wanted to make tonight. Very often when we get calls on a new matter, it's the parents who are concerned about what's going to happen to my daughter when I go, or it's a sibling of the kid saying that my brother's still living at home with my mother who's 83, and where's this going to go? And they're coming to me for answers. And I really always emphasize that, you go to a lawyer for the answer to answer the question of how. Once you decide what it is you want to do, we're good at strategies for getting their implementation. But the what of where the person should live, what kind of services does he need, who should be involved in oversight of them, how is it going to get paid for? It's really the first basic questions are the ones for the disability or the human services professional, whether it's we'll talk a little bit about that. So where do you go specifically for help on these things? But it's, the care planning question is critical. So where are we going with this? There's a human resources question. And as Joan was mentioning about how should I tap the skills and experiences of different family members in a way that really makes sense for them and for my child. And then ultimately, there's this question of how are we going to pay for this? And that's really the lawyer's question. But that's the last question. It's the implementation question. So another point that Joan made that I just want to underscore has to do with this team aspect of this. You're not going to find anybody who's going to be able to answer all of these questions. Some relate to social services, developmental disabilities professionals, intellectual disabilities professionals, mental health professionals, whoever you're dealing with about the particular case. They're the ones who can help you do with long-term care planning. And the personnel, family assessment, family dynamic stuff is plainly the domain of the knowledgeable social worker. And then that's the human resources component of the question. And the last is the sort of the financial one. And that's partly for a lawyer, particularly in terms of benefits, but also for a financial planner or an accountant or somebody who can really deal with the family creatively and thinking about how they can make the most of what they have to contribute toward that continuing care responsibility. So that was really my opening shtick. I think everything else I was going to say, Joan has already talked about. So I think what we talked about doing was treating this as if, which I've done many times with Joan. I've said, Joan, do you have a minute? I've got this situation and I don't know what to do with it. And then I'm going to ask a question of Joan. Then she's done the same thing with me. It's legal issues about how does a trust work and all, that sort of thing. So she'll do that, and hopefully the conversation will help things move along, and we don't want to sort of sit back and lecture. And it'll also suggest to people listening for them raise additional questions. The other thing I'll just mention in passing, just to make sure you all have it, we submitted, there were 3 papers that I prepared or updated for the program, and they are available through Tracy. And if you haven't gotten them yet, or if you want more links to it or whatever, then you can contact Tracy either through the chat or afterwards, and she'll get them to you. There's just much too much to talk about to try to present all of this. So we're going to try to focus on things through the questions. So you went first initially. I'll go first with the question?
Go.
Is it okay?
Go.
Okay.
Go,
All right.
go to it.
All right. So this is These are drawn kind of from whole life. All right. Joan, thank you for giving me 5 minutes, although it's going to take 10. I have a client who's 89. She's a widow. She's had a few scares, but she's doing pretty well at home. But I think partly because she has a son living there with her. This isn't one of those late bloomer situations. The son is 58. He has Down syndrome. He works part-time and he really functions pretty well. He's beloved at work and his customers love him. He works in a grocery store as a bagger. But he can't begin to function independently. He's got a good schedule that he can maintain, but he really can't function independently. Mom is very dependent on him for the help that he gives her in terms of things around the house, chores and cleaning and taking care of things. And she manages, he manages because she's available to help manage his bank account and deal with things that might come up at work, and doctor's appointments and his social calendar and all of that. And I really don't know how either of them would get by without the other. Now, I know that this can't go on forever. And I'm sure mom knows that at some level. And I think son may not have thought about it yet. But mom refuses to think, let alone make plans for him going to live somewhere else for this inevitable transition. And I think she could really benefit from assisted living now or soon. And I'm very concerned about how difficult that decision will be. I'm scared to death that if she suddenly is hospitalized and goes to a nursing home or dies, he's living there at home alone. And I've seen what happens in other situations where a person is in the system is unprepared to deal with him. The emergency services are just that. They're just gap filling. And if you can get them at all, you really have a potential for a crisis. There aren't other family members close at hand or closely involved. I really need to get her to do some planning. How do I convince her to get started on this?
Well, this is it's interesting because you said that he has Down syndrome. And people with Down syndrome, there's such, I think it's 100% link between that and Alzheimer's. So there's going to be some physical manifestations if there haven't already been, with walking with some. So I'd like to see what the house looks like, first of all. Does the house have stairs? Is he having any issues with stairs or perception? Something that would indicate that he needs a different environment. I'd like to know what the house looks like. And I would talk to her about the house. What does the house have? How many stairs are there to go in? Are there stairs to his bedroom? And has she noticed anything different about his walking? Since he's working, he's not connected to it. He probably doesn't have anybody that's helping him out at his job. He's probably not in supported work, but I don't know if he's connected to DDS. I'd assume he is because he probably had gone to some of the recreational programs that were sponsored through the ARCs or, through some organization. So I would get the DDS. I'd ask if there's any clergy involved. I think I'd ask if there's any friends he has. Certainly going to be no one at work, but sometimes if there's someone at work, if he's been at the same supermarket for years, there may be someone that knows him that has some kind of, that could be a friend to him, So you're just looking at the network, you put the pebble out and you see who's in the network. Is there anybody in the street that would know him, a neighbor if they've lived in the same house for a long time? See, you really have to tell, you don't want to scare the mother that he's going to have Alzheimer's, immediately. So it's a delicate walking, balancing act. But I think you want to show to her that he is going to need more supports than she's going to be able to give him. So, the statistics, I think it's almost 100% correlation. I think, but so that's one thing I'd see. You said that there's no siblings, but there might be some cousin. There might be some cousin she had, or some people that are out of state. Because it's funny when you start digging with families, you can find that although there's not someone local, with because we have the internet and we have email, and it's not hard to communicate with people that are out of state. It's if they can't go to do online, they can't do regular visiting. But then the other thing would to appeal to the mother, that knowing this is where he's going to be. It would be, they'd look for residential service. He would be a high priority because of the mother's age. And they would look, the state would look for a program that would be near his work and also be accessible home, because I'm sure that a lot of these older homes that people, if she's 89, she probably hasn't moved in a long time, you know. So those are some of the things that I would start with. And then I would ask if she'd be willing to visit some homes.
Yeah.
To visit some homes and just see what they're like. She's probably never been. And those are the, you know, it's delicate because you don't want it to get scared and that could cause a heart attack, you know, for a variety, you know, there's all kinds of things that could, but you want to just say that you're doing this for yourself and you're doing this for him. That's the way I would approach it. And you have to be gentle with it, but I think she knows at one level that it has to be, that she's not going to live forever. She does know that, and she doesn't want him to die in a bad way. You know, we can assume that. So those are some ways that I would approach it.
That's nice. The idea of sort of with her not focusing on her needs, but saying that you ask, you know, to focus on his, that you need to do this for his sake, you know, because of how hard it's going to be for him when you're gone suddenly to make this transition. I didn't bring that.
I didn't bring as much. I didn't emphasize as much as I should have, because then she could visit him. But you're bringing that up there.
Right,
so
right.
It takes a team effort when you're developing these plans. It really does.
Well,
You know?
it's interesting because it also, I've dealt with the same thing with married couples who both say they're not ready for assisted living when everybody in the world knows they are.
Yeah.
What I've done sometimes is, I shouldn't broadcast this because my trick will be out, but what I've done sometimes is to talk to them separately and say, you know, you really ought to do this for Jack's sake. You really need to do it. You know, you're not ready for it, but he is. And you really, if something happens to you and he's left alone, yada, yada. And then I'll have exactly the same conversation with the other spouse. They'll do for each other what they won't do for themselves.
Right. And
loving relationship.
And I think it's going to be harder on her than it is for him.
Yeah.
Her adjustment would be harder.
Yeah.
Because he'll love the social aspect, because I'm sure it's not that social back at the house.
Yep.
You know, and I think that it's going to, for her, it could hasten her death. I just don't, I mean, there's things, but I think she really has to think about that. I mean, I'm not saying that it's going to, but it's a hard decision, but I think she has to make it for him, because he has, she hasn't lived without him. And that's one of the reasons it's sustaining her.
Great.
So I think it's best for both of them, though. I really do. Yeah.
Great. All right. Your question.
Okay. I was super impressed with the materials that you wrote. And I think that I urge everyone to read the three little booklets, the little pamphlets. One is 26 pages, but the other is about 16 pages. It's just filled with a wealth of decision making, and you were sensitive to the complexities on competency in deciding how to make decisions about capacity of the disabled person to make financial and medical choices. In the past, people got guardians. They all got guardians, and then it was so wrong. They took away people's rights who really didn't merit having their rights taken away. But in a nutshell, could you summarize this advice? I think it will explain the sensitivities necessary to make when considering this choice about competency, and how would,
right.
I mean, you in order to get guardianship or something on, you need a clinical report. You need to go talk, and you can see. But you have to ask to do this. And how do you decide when you're given that? They said, I want a guardianship for my daughter. How do you decide what to tell them?
Well, actually, I have an article on that. I wasn't going to put 4 articles out for today. I could make it available for the last program.
Yeah.
It's specifically, actually, one of them is directed to care managers, you know, to educate them specifically about the issue of sort of in the field, in real life, how to decide whether somebody is competent to sign a healthcare proxy statement or a durable power of attorney. the law has really shifted enormously on this over the years. As Joan was saying earlier, it used to be a kind of a cut and dried thing. If you had the label of then mentally retarded, you were assumed to be not capable of making decisions for yourself and not participating in decisions. The law has changed dramatically, first actually through the courts, and then finally with some legislative changes, where now the situation is really reversed. The courts have said that it's only in the most severe cases that a full guardian is warranted. There's a great favoritism toward either a limited guardianship where the specific areas of the person's difficulties are highlighted and the guardian is given authority just over those things. The most common kind of limited guardianship involves medical decision-making.
Yeah.
We'll take this, I don't think I gave him a name, the 50-year-old with Downs who's functions in the community pretty well at a lot of levels. He goes to a doctor. I mean, he knows what doctors do. He knows when he's sick. He knows he can distinguish between, family members and friends and others. He's very, well oriented. I think a court in a situation like that would feel that he is competent to make a decision about a healthcare proxy, to make a decision about if I get sick and if I'm asleep or I'm unconscious or I can't make decisions about some medical decision, I know I can figure out who I would like that person to be. And that's what competency is for a healthcare proxy. We've developed a whole protocol in the office about alternatives to guardianship is what the category is. And what we try to do, we evaluate and see whether there's anything that the person really is capable of doing. And we interview the person, talk to the person, figure out where we think they are competent to make some decisions. And then there's a battery of things that we do by which they can designate somebody else to help them or represent them or make decisions for them. Just like an adult, any other adult, it's a durable power of attorney for legal and financial things and benefits issues.
So you might do like a functional assessment. You do a functional assessment on everyday activity.
Right. I mean, the law, that's what the law is really geared to. It doesn't require a clinical assessment. No. It's sort of real life. And if you look through even the material that's available through the courts, they're talking about kind of real life capacities to do things, then tailoring the guardianship, if the guardianship is needed at all, to those things. It's exciting and it does a lot of things. It also, aside from minimizing the extent to which the individual is restricted in what they can do, which is just good on general principles, it sort of says to the person, you're competent, we're listening to you, you're a person, you're an adult. And that's sort of there's a power in having expectations of people, positive expectations.
That's
it helps them grow. And
yeah. I'd like to, you can send me that paper, okay?
Okay, all right, okay, all right. Should I ask my second?
Yeah, go to the next one, sure, yeah.
Okay. Let's see, what was it about? Oh, okay. So I've got a client who's now in assisted living. She has a older adult in early 50s. Let's continue with that sort of situation.
Yeah.
A daughter who had been living with her alone and is now trying to manage at home, but is having great difficulty. And there's some talk even about thinking about a joint placement for them in assisted living. And part of my question has to do with, have you ever seen that, or does that make sense? If a number of these seem to happen particularly with mothers and daughters. I have another one where I'm dealing with the same issue right now. Mom is 82 and daughter is 60. They're still living at home now, but it's not working out. So we're thinking about assisted living. So part of the question is sort of what kind of alternative arrangements are available for this sort of a situation. And the second is, how do I begin to think about the costs of this, or how it gets financed, how we should think about allocating issues, or if I'm going to try to protect some assets for the benefit of the mom and some for the daughter, how I just think about that.
Okay, well, so I wasn't sure about this daughter, if she was living by herself, but she's living without supports. Is that right?
Right, but marginally. I mean, it's not a situation which can continue long.
But could she get service? Could she get supports from
All right,
DD?
so that's one question, is whether, right, to explore then the avenue of supports at home or with another family member, I suppose. You know,
Yeah,
to
I mean,
keep
there's
her-
so many different, I don't know, that was my first question, to see if she's connected to DDS.
Good,
Because
right.
if she weren't, it's unusual that people haven't been connected to DDS. And I've found, it's really interesting, I've found that some people were made eligible for DDS services a long time ago and even recently, that I wouldn't have, when I was an area director, made eligible, because they were too high IQs,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and it's just, but so some people slip through. And we had a rule that if you couldn't determine, you know, basic plus or minus 70, you know, maybe at 1 point on either side, and school records had been destroyed because of fire or something, we couldn't find, if we didn't have records to say that, we couldn't say they were eligible. You know, it different. So it wasn't standard throughout the state, because different people had different rules, which they, you know, within the region or something. But anyways, so I don't know what this person's level is. And if she is eligible for services, that's the first thing I would explore. Because there's individual service plans, there's person-centered planning, there's supports that can be given 6 hours a week, 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, that could help with, you know, budgeting. And, you know, even Springwell does that things. Springwell helps out with the budgeting and things like that. It depends upon how old the daughter is, you know. She might even be eligible for the services from Springwell for helping to budget. You know, you have to look what her needs are. There's going to be the budgeting, there's going to be the cooking, there's going to be the shopping, you know, and then the health care. So first thing I'd look to see the daughter. If the daughter doesn't need assisted living, then why place her in assisted living unless she's really lonely, you know, unless she really misses her mother. It's a very expensive alternative. It's going to be about $6,000 a month. And then you have to figure out, you know, does she really want that? So, I mean, you have to get to know what she really wants before we can see if assisted living would be good for her. But if there are other children involved, I'd like to how old she is, you know, and is she still working? You know, there's so many things we need to know about her, because I think there are people that can live with, you know, 7 to 10 to 15 hours per week of supports that is not terribly expensive, you know, with a public agency to spend. And agencies in a variety of different providers do this kind of supports, would visit them weekly, you know, and do these supports. So that's the first thing I would do. If the house is paid for and she can get some supports, that may be something. So I can't say how much money we'd need yet, you know, because we don't know what the state is going to be giving.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you need to know what, yeah, first you have to decide what it is she needs, and then.
Yeah. But I mean, but it's, because the mother's that she has to do the transfer. That's another whole issue that I'm not sure how to transfer those assets. You know, but
I'll get back to that issue.
yeah. But I think it seems to me that you want people to live in the least restrictive environment. And if she's not unhappy living at home, just lonely, what can be done to build that? So we have to, you know, she could get to speak to a social worker on a regular basis, see what she really wanted to get to know that, because I don't know if she's working. I mean, there's so many things we don't know about her, the daughter. Well, she's Social Security disability, but she still could be working a little bit. You know, it doesn't preclude her working.
Right.
So it's premature to ask until we know a lot more about the daughter. But I would say that the idea is to keep her in the least restrictive environment, if that's possible, and see how much she's feeling at the current situation and what could be done to improve that if she wanted it. Yeah, okay.
But I want to pick up on your point about DDS. You know, about the DDS connection and exploring whether she has one. One thing I've often felt is that even, long before, even families that are fully functional, they're managing things at home with the child well, but thinking down the road to the potential need for DDS involvement at some point. I've always stressed the importance of beginning to build those bridges now. Even if you don't need DDS now, make them aware of you, get on their radar, use something from them, participate in their education programs.
Oh, you have to.
Use respite care, just get your toe in the door so that people know you, so that you get factored into their area budgets, and then they're much more able to respond quickly if things go downhill fast.
It's all electronic records they have now, so that they can pull the data up, this data analysis. If they don't have it in the system, then they can't do any planning.
Right.
Even if it's not active.
Right.
No, I think having worked for DDS for 25 years, I'm a big advocate of the agency. I know that they don't have the resources they did before as far as the visiting by the service coordinators, visiting the homes as much. But I still think that there's a quality of services there that's pretty high quality.
Yeah.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But okay, that's.
I guess it's your turn for a question.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, a little question here. Okay, just a second. Yeah. Okay. We have discussed how the benefits of having a trust can supplement the state offered services for the disabled person who was receiving Mass Health. How is this legally possible? I have seen these benefits. I have seen people who have Mass Health and still have a trust. And I know that they've been able to purchase extra supports through some very nice mechanisms that have worked out between the courts and the lawyers. But if a trust is not established, is a disabled person able to receive gifts from family members to receive enhanced paid services?
All right, this is a great open-ended question. I'll probably spend more time on this one than anything else. Let me try to get into this. It's a very complicated topic. It's really linked to transfers also and trusts. The idea of putting money aside in some way. Now, why bother to do that? I think the main reason is that in order to be eligible for Mass Health, for Medicaid, or for SSI, or for a number of programs which are called means tested, like your financial means, limited eligibility, limited to people with modest assets and income. If a person is on those benefits and hasn't managed through some family mechanism to put something aside, then they're really left in a highly impoverished state.
Yeah.
They may, in Massachusetts, their subsistence needs will be met, but for things that you would really refer to as providing quality of life or opportunities for personal growth or maximum involvement with other family members, maximum involvement with people in the community and outside of the closed service system, all those things take extra resources.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if a person doesn't have them one way or another, the person is really up a creek. This has become, I won't go through this now, but I just did, for my own interest, I just did some calculations based on, for instance, there's an asset limit on eligibility for supplemental security income, one of the Social Security programs. It's $2,000.
Right.
It went up to $2,000 in 1982. So that's a lot of cost of living increase and inflation under the dam since then.
Wow.
It takes, so for a person to be, a person would need more than almost $7,000 now to be as poor as they were in 82 with $2,000. So if you can only have $2,000 now, you're at 1/3 the level or 1/4 the level of actual wealth in terms of expendable money than you were then.
I never thought of this before, Don.
It's worse actually with the limitations on earned and unearned income for SSI have not changed since 1972 when the program was first established, not once. And there we're talking about thousands of dollars of difference that people should be able to earn without having any offset on SSI.
Yeah, yeah.
That they're limited to that amount. So a program which was established to establish a income floor for people regardless of their disability has long lost its real function in that capacity. And it's not a matter of being more generous, it's just a matter of keeping pace with the initial intention of the program, and the government's never done it. So it puts a premium on families' ability to figure out ways to set aside, if they have it, to set aside some additional funds in a way which won't make the people ineligible for benefits. And there are a variety of ways to do this. We have one of the papers we have in the office that lists 17 or 18 different kinds of trusts that we use in the elder and disability law context and planning in this area. There are three major ones that I should mention. One is one that really comes from the parent's estate plan, typically gets funded at the death of the parent. And the parent is saying, I have 3 kids, I love them equally. When I'm gone and my wife is gone, we want whatever's left to be divided up into 3 parts. John, who works for IBM, gets 1. Mary, who's an orthopedic surgeon, gets the 2nd. And for Joe, who's the special needs child who's on benefits, he's going to get his 3rd too, but his is going to be in trust. And what that means is that dad is setting aside this money to be held and managed by somebody else, a trustee, for Joe's benefit. The trustee will have control over how the money is spent. Joe won't have any absolute right to receive money. It won't say that he has to receive a certain amount each month or anything like that. It won't say that Joe has a right to request money. The control will be in the hands of the trustee. And under state law, where Joe himself doesn't have the legal ability to control where this money is going to be used, just like he didn't have control over his dad's money. Dad had the right to use it any way you want. State wasn't going to count dad's funds for Joe's eligibility. A trust is viewed as the same way. It's a separate person. And if the trust is worded properly and it's supplemental and all of that, but it's not a very difficult standard, then the money can be set aside and used to provide supplementally for Joe. We still want to rely on the state benefits first because there's not all that much money in this trust. Really, it would be used up in a flash if it were the first dollar. But we want to go as far as we can with the state services and then supplement with this. Now, parents will, just a quick aside on this, parents will sometimes say, well, the rules can change and I trust my other kids. I'm going to give this, I forgot their names already. I'm going to give this to my other 2 kids. They have plenty of money of their own. They don't need this, but they'll hold it and manage it for Joe. There are lots of reasons not to do this. Joan is shaking her head.
Definitely not. Definitely not do it. No, it's too open-ended. It's too open-ended.
There's too much risk that the money will just become part of the estates of the other kids, and too much risk that it'll just get absorbed into their needs and into the college educations of their kids, or that it'll be borrowed against. It's even hard within the married couple themselves. I mean, the brother may say, look, we shouldn't spend this money, it's for Joe. And his wife said, yeah, but we really need it, or I really want that house or the place in the Cape, so we'll buy the house in the Cape, but it'll still be there. It'll still be there for Joe. We can use it for him if we need it, but it doesn't, so it's really problematical.
It's very interesting because, I know that some people could go to Disneyland, they would do this trips, and the people that had a little bit of extra money, they could go because they're not making any money working. They're in day habs and things like that. They don't get any remuneration at their day programs. And those little things, I mean, it's once a year. We're not talking $20,000. We'd probably be talking about $1,000, $2,000 a year. I mean, it makes an enormous difference in the life. So I think I think we don't need enormous amounts of money, right.
Today we don't, based on, and that's what they'll say. They'll say, well, look, he's getting along he's on subsidized housing, he's getting his money, only 30% of his income goes to housing expenses, which is a much lower percentage than anybody. He's got enough to live on, and he's getting services from DDS. But the part of the issue is that That's not necessarily always going to be the case. Few
And-
things can happen. One, his needs can change in a direction that DDS isn't going to be as helpful with, like with mental health services.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The other thing that can happen is that the service system itself can change, and the services can become either less adequate or less available. So he may need something very different in the future. The
Yeah,
fact that he's doing fine now shouldn't give you reason to not to plan for a potentially more difficult outcome later.
No, no.
Let me just mention there are three other things I want to mention briefly
Sure.
along these
Yeah,
trusts. One is something that's called a special needs trust. That terminology has gotten difficult, problematical, because it's a term that we always used to use kind of casually in talking about a trust for somebody with special needs. It was kind of a generic way of talking about this. The federal government in some reforms in 96 established a category, a very narrowly defined category of something which it labeled a special needs trust. Kind of think of it as with capital letters. This is we call it a qualified special needs trust, or it's some way to distinguish it. But this is a trust that it works under several exceptions to the transfer rules and the trust rules, one of which is very pertinent to the context of the aging parent who has a disabled son or daughter. And let me focus on that aspect of it. Ordinarily, if an individual transfers assets, gives assets to other family members other than the spouse, gives assets to their kids, then there is a look back, a 5-year period of time after that transfer, where there's going to be a problem with Medicaid eligibility for long-term care, either in a nursing home or even in some community programs under waiver programs they're called, or frail elder programs. So typically an elder, if they have excess assets and are already 80 or 82 or 84, aren't in a position to make that kind of transfer. They can't take the risk that they might need the money in the next 5 years. It's a long, time to sort of be without the support. And we're going to end up discouraging them from making any transfers. There are a couple of exceptions, and they can be useful if used in a balanced way. And one is that the law allows mom, in the example, to transfer some of her assets to one of these special needs trusts for a child of hers who is permanently and totally disabled, is the terminology they use. And the person would qualify if they're getting Social Security disability or SSI.
It doesn't have to be, yeah.
They don't have to be getting it. You can still fit the category, but if they are in that category, and most of the people we deal with are,
The bar is very low, but the bar is low.
And that's the bar. I mean, they don't really inquire beyond that. That answers the question. And what the law would allow mom to do is to transfer assets to a trust for that child without the 5-year look back coming into play, and without interfering with the child's benefits, and without interfering with mom's benefits if she needed to apply for Medicaid.
Oh, that's great.
For herself. So it's a very important tool. Now, the timing on its use is very important, because say mom is still in assisted living. The prospect of her making this transfer to the special needs trust could be devastating from her perspective, because she then might run out of money herself to stay in assisted living as long as she wants to. She could be forced to go to a nursing home prematurely. So we really want to do this generally only when it's clear that there is a nursing home placement that's inevitable, and it's likely to be long-term. It's like, we call it a terminal placement. The person is not likely to come back from it. At that point, Medicaid, we know, is going to cover the placement costs, and Medicaid is, almost every nursing home in the state is qualified participates in Medicaid. We don't have a separate system of Medicaid nursing homes. Somebody was talking about whether the Medicaid is a problem for nursing home placement. We can talk about that some more. But the idea then is that mom can transfer assets to this trust for the disabled child without causing a problem. There is also a vehicle. I mean, you hate to leave mom with just the $2,000 that she's allowed on Medicaid. Of the income that she gets, she's only going to be allowed $72.60. Don't ask how they computed that. In out of her monthly income for her own needs, including clothing and personal things, let alone, visits out of the facility or
Getting a haircut.
getting your hair cut. Right. That doesn't, Medicaid doesn't pay for that. Right. Then that's it. I mean, that's it. It used to call it cigarette money. They don't call it cigarette money anymore. But but there is a vehicle also for managing that. Mom, while she's giving maybe the bulk of her resources to the Special Needs Trust, can retain some and transfer it to another vehicle called a pooled trust. Pooled like swimming pool, POOLED, pooled trust. These are run by nonprofit agencies in Massachusetts and nationally, authorized by law. Mom can transfer, let's say that, I mean, mom's in the nursing home, she really doesn't need that much, but say $5,000 or something as a supplemental resource for her, can go into a pooled trust account the mom can set up, and that can be used to pay for supplemental things for her while she gives the bulk of her assets to her son. Now, it used to be, well, the state has been threatening for years to limit pooled trusts for elders to elders who are under age 65. But they haven't pulled the trigger on that yet. And so it's still possible to do. So I'm going into detail on strategies, not because that strategy is going to be specifically appropriate for you, but there's an array of things which really are available in this field to try to find some way of meeting the needs both of the elder and of the disabled child. Let me mention just one other quick one because it's new, not a trust at all. It's an ABLE account, ABLE. This is authorized under federal and state law. It's, if you have any familiarity with 529 plans, education funds for kids, this is actually in the same section of the IRS law that deals with 529 plans. It's a special program under which the individual, the disabled individual, or anyone else on his behalf can transfer assets to an ABLE account that the individual establishes or gets established for him. It's kind of a savings account. In Massachusetts, Fidelity is the agency that's authorized to run these things now. You can do them in other states. But what it does is that you open up an account like a savings account, you can transfer money to it, and the transfers don't disqualify anybody. They don't disqualify the parent from taking some money and putting it into an ABLE account, or a sibling who wants to give a birthday present to our Joe and doesn't want to give him the cash directly because that could interfere with his mass health eligibility or his SSI. If he puts the birthday present in the ABLE account, it doesn't interfere with any of that. Joe himself, if Joe is, Joe might be at age 63, Joe has saved some money from his work. He has $10,000 in the bank. He's been living at home, has a lot of expenses. He's managed some savings. He's 63. At age 65, for him to stay on Medicaid, he can't have more than $2,000. So Joe, in our case, could set up an ABLE account into which he could put his excess assets so that he could stay on Medicaid at age 65, but still have access to these funds. He can draw them out and use them for a whole long list of potential expenses and needs. So the point is that there is a variety of tools in this toolbox that lawyers can use once they sort of get a sense of what mom's situation is nursing home placement inevitable or not, what kind of supplemental services might she benefit from even in the nursing home, what's John's situation in the community, can sort of use these tools in a variety of ways to try to structure the family finances in a way that continues to be effective for them, even though they're on benefits.
It's so complicated, but this is definitely a lawyer's job. That's what we have to do. Yeah, no. Dawn, I think think we probably should open up to questions now rather than we have some other good questions to ask each other, but I think with this, I'm glad that you brought up is trust really elude me, you know, but you gave us so many different possibilities that are possible to do, and that's why we have to know more about them. Okay. Yeah.
So I have not received any questions from anyone from the chat. So
Okay. Okay, then we'll continue our questions. Should we?
Yeah.
if anyone
Okay.
has a question, either you can ask it or you can write it in the chat and then I can ask it for you. So, but I just haven't received any as of yet.
Okay.
Also, we had said before, Joan, I'm okay if people have a question that they want to direct, you know, to me outside of the program. I'm happy to try to respond to, you know, general questions. I can't really give specific advice to people on that kind of a basis, but if I can give somebody guidance, that would be fine.
Yeah, that'd be, Tracy, you can share my email with people. I'd be glad to try to do that too. Because one of the things that I wanted to mention is that if people, you know, don't have a service, if they don't have someone to go to, there's two different websites that they could go to. The professional organization that Audrey Zabin and I belong to is the Aging Life Care Association. And it has a website and you can find it under the website. It works really easily. It has a box where you can find a care manager, and you can look at the specialties that some of these care managers have. They're elder care managers, but some of them, like myself or others, have specialties in mental health issues, developmental disabilities issues, physical disabilities, Parkinson's, you know, so you can take a look at that, and that would be one. And the other agency that does have something is called Support Brokers through the ARC of Massachusetts. They have individuals that will go out and do advocacy, monitoring, mentoring for your developmentally disabled person on an hourly basis, and it's a statewide organization. And I'll send that. It's a Mahoney at ARC Mass. So it's we can send that out afterwards. All right.
Yeah, actually, I thought of another one too. The Jewish Family and Children's Services in Waltham both has care managers through a program called Your Elder Experts. And I know that some of them also have experience in these situations where there's a younger disabled individual involved.
Yeah.
There's also a fairly new program at JFNCS, and I can't remember the name of it now, but deals with more of this kind of life planning. I forgot. Do you know the program, Joan? I can't remember what it is.
No, I don't.
There's a program
Yes,
talking
yes,
about it.
they might know, but
Sarah,
no, I can't remember.
Sarah Friedman's on the call. Do you know the name? I saw your name here on the call.
Oh, Sarah would know.
Yeah, it's lifespan.
That's it.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank
yeah.
you, Sarah.
Those 3 different ones. So there are you know, statewide organizations that can help out if you can't get a family member to help out. But if you want, you can certainly write to me, and I'll be glad to talk, you know, to people that if they have a question. Yeah, I'll be glad to answer emails. Yeah.
Somebody just made a comment. They said JFNCS tends to take folks who are less impaired and not on DDS services. Do you have a comment about that?
I don't think that's true.
Well, I guess, I was thinking of a couple of different things. One is sort of help with planning. You know, it's not that you're necessarily going to get direct services from JFNCS in terms of placement issues. Or you may not be looking for that. The HIGH program, they have a housing program specifically.
Right.
But Sarah, am I correct about that? That if somebody's looking for help in the kind of planning that we're talking about, especially this kind of joint or dual generation planning, is JFNCS a good place for them to call?
Absolutely. JFNCS helps folks, particularly with planning with all different types of disabilities, mental health challenges, physical disabilities, developmental disabilities, as well as older adults through Your Elder Experts. So I can put the phone number in the chat as well, so people can feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Hope you didn't mind me putting you on the air here. Take advantage.
Not at all.
Okay. We're not related, by the way, even though our names are the same.
Spelled a little differently, yeah.
There was another question.
I was just going to offer a little bit more information in terms of assisted living and senior housing and moving adult children and elders. It's been my experience, and Joan, first of all, thank you for doing this again. You are the guru on this for sure. But it's been my experience, Joan, over the years that I've worked in the industry, that senior communities are now a lot more accepting of adult children and seniors moving into senior communities if this is what they choose to do.
Yes, and the people in the assisted livings are allowing people to come in from outside agencies to give the support, as opposed to a home care agency that would be doing,
That's right.
that would just be doing home health care. They'd be doing different kind of supports.
Because
So that they're very open to, they're open to anything. Assisted livings certainly are, and there's certain ones that have more experience with it.
yes, and they're much more open to it. And of course, there's certain generations where it's harder for now adult or perhaps even aging disabled to separate from their parents. So it sometimes will make good sense for them to remain together, and communities are accepting of that.
Yeah, no, one thing I've seen or thinking about in this particular case I have is that the also promises to provide a kind of a soft landing for or an easier transition for the daughter with the death of the parent. Parent has a progressive illness. The handwriting's on the wall about this. It's not clear how long that they would be together in assisted living before the mom died. But if the daughter is there and establishes herself in the community, in a position where her youth and her, vigor is something that would be very much, enjoyed by other people there. You could really see her making a real productive home for herself.
I've had a couple of situations locally where that's been very successful. The other thing to tell the community is I did put in the aging life care management website.
Great.
For those who are looking. And as Joan said, we specialize in different things. Besides elder, I do extensive mental health. I've used JF&CS for disabilities as well. So there are resources out there.
Very good. All right, I think we may, are there other questions, or I know they really wanted us to be sure to finish up before 7:30 tonight. There's some other programming going on.
It wasn't a question, so I'm not sure what the question is. They mentioned that they have a son, the son's in the 50s, lives alone, works full time, independent, but emotionally mature, socially isolated, lives like a hermit. The father is about 80 and is there for him if he needs, and the son also has a brother, but let me just see if I see. And the son, I see. The son is on the West Coast. How does this father help someone who refuses help? He has CP, cerebral palsy, I believe that is. So,
Wow.
Who has CP?
The son
the son does.
The son on the West Coast.
West Coast. So he lives alone, but he's emotionally immature. He's in his 50s. He can't, manage.
Who has
Joan,
CP?
wouldn't Aging Life Care Association be a #1 referral?
Yeah,
Because we have colleagues all over the country.
yeah. That's the website is so easy to use. It says 5 miles from this zip code, 10 miles from this zip code, and they give you all the care managers.
And again, it's in the chat box.
Yeah.
If anybody needs it.
Alpha.com. Yep.
Yeah, I guess one thing to mention about geography here is that a lot of the things that we're talking about, the legal rules, kinds of trusts, benefit programs and so forth are local, they're state by state. And so in a situation like this, it's going to be important to establish some contacts where the son is.
And lives.
Right, because that's the lawyer there is going to know that situation. The care manager there is going to know the system there, and that's going to be critical.
Right. And this affects many entitlements, including healthcare. So if you're on mass health here and then there's eligibility here in Massachusetts, it may not be the same in California.
It's not.
No, it's not.
So it's not.
Yeah.
So that is why you really need to work with the clinician within that zip code.
Right. Now that clinician's obviously going now with Zoom as a help, clinician obviously is going to have to spend a lot of time early on with dad to sort of get a sense of what's going on and possible ways of intervening, possible ways of getting him engaged in some community activities and whatever they come up with as a way of trying to leverage the situation. But that's the hardest thing in this. We're in a legal climate where independence is very important, and autonomy, and the government should be hands-off individuals, and this is kind of very much the ethic. So the problem, if somebody's willing to acknowledge that they need help and can ask for it or can invite help, whether it's a social worker or a lawyer, it's a huge leg up. The situations where the person is refusing, there's not a lot that can be done, short of a completely out of control situation where you could consider guardianship or something like that.
Really, really hard.
But
Really.
I think that one of the good things about Zoom is that for life care managers, we are doing more and more coaching with families.
Yeah.
More education and coaching. So that's been a help, I think, as well.
Great.
If anyone has questions for Dawn or for Joni or for Audrey, a few people asked me for your emails. You can email me afterwards, and I can certainly forward questions to them if you don't have their emails.
We do have one question.
Sure.
We have a question for Dawn, I believe. We saw this very helpful meeting in the Globe, so thank you. And I noticed it a couple of weeks ago. My wife and I are second marriage. My wife has an adult daughter who's 39 living with us. And we're just recently retired, Dawn. And we realized reading through the 60+ pages here today, I realized it's complicated and it's custom for each individual. But my wife wants to ask a question, I guess.
In the past, I've asked questions, but I have not got any good answers. What are the options for residential placements in the future for my daughter?
That may be more for Mrs. Katz.
Yes, I don't know.
What is your daughter's? What is her presentation?
Yes.
She's moderate to high functioning. She lives home with us and she does a lot of things independently. She was never in a crisis situation, which is why they said she wasn't appropriate for a group home. But we were wondering if there was any options for the future for her.
Of course, there are. Where do you live? Do you live in the greater Boston area or do you live further?
Yes,
Where
yes,
Methuen?
north of Boston and Methuen.
Okay, no, I would go back to, if you're not connected to your DDS office, I would go back there.
Yeah,
And
we
I would
are.
go and ask for some kind of support services. That's, they do support services, and that's what I was talking about with the case that Dawn brought up as a person. What does she need to live in the house? I don't know what your daughter would need. There's all kinds of support services that are available, 10 to 12 hours a week that could teaching her things. And
Yes,
then she,
yes.
yeah.
And
Do you
she's
have that?
fine now. She's doing very well now. And she's at a program 5 days a week.
But I'm talking about residential. This is residential support. So this is different.
Yeah.
This is getting her to the point where she can make shopping lists and figure out. So it's not day program oriented. It's actually oriented toward living. And that's
Right,
Jane,
right.
this could
That's
be
what
in
I
a-
was wondering for
like
her.
an apartment, could be an
20 years or
apartment with a
so.
roommate and supports, that kind of thing.
Yes, yes.
yeah.
That would be a kind of a model, yeah.
Are they still doing that? Because she wouldn't need assisted living, I can't imagine.
No. I think that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's connecting her with other people who have a similar, and they can share apartments. People have different strengths in an apartment. I think I would go back. Have you talked to the service coordinator about that lately, that you wanted that for your daughter to think about it?
Yes, that has been asked of them, yes. But she's doing well right now and we don't need her to go anywhere.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
require a lot of supports to live in an apartment.
Okay, but I think even if she went into a group home, you know,
Yeah.
eventually, but I think you have to just see but you want to train her so she's able to, you know, as much cooking, as much as making a shopping list, as making it, you know, knowing how to do a budget, if she can do math. I'm not sure what, you know, her ability, but you wanted to get as many skills as she can. And then the idea was that you don't, it's not always going to be your responsibility.
Right. Is there any certain criteria to get her into a residential?
Well, it depends upon the office and depends upon the priorities they have in the office, but they're based upon the age of, you know, the age of the parent, the disability, the needs of the person, the risk factors. It's based upon, you know, that what you consider the higher priorities. If you're saying
Right.
she's doing fine, then she won't be a priority, you know.
Right.
And you don't want to create something that is not a problem, but you want to work toward a goal, and that would be her service plan. You're working towards something. It's a 5-year plan, whatever, that you want her to get these skills in the next year, in the subsequent years.
Okay.
The other thing I'd mention on that is that I think this issue of timing is really a delicate one. You don't want to do it early, but you don't want to do it late. And sort of how do you tell in advance, you know, what that timing is? I mean, there's some advantages to doing it a little early before it's necessary, because you really have a chance to oversee and supervise and, you know, moderate things and help with the adjustment and make sure that things are going well, that you wouldn't have if it was, the placement was a result of a, you know, a real catastrophe.
Emergency.
Where she has to deal both with the loss of a parent at the same time that she's got a loss of a home and needs to live
Exactly. I've always said that. Yes.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So Dawn, can I ask, it seems like we need to take another look at our will
Yeah.
and think about some trusts. We purposely left Heather, our daughter, my stepdaughter, out of the will basically, and left her shared to her sister, which is now which is what your paper says not to do.
Yeah.
I imagine we could we could work with you to draw up a will. I mean, I know that the lawyer that helped us with the will a couple of years ago said he didn't do trusts, but more and more I hear there's a lot going on with trusts for special needs kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 4 people we do a lot of this elder disability work. There are really 4 people who do estate planning and this sort of thing in my office.
Yes, okay.
Often we evaluate people's plans and give them ideas about how they might make changes to deal with this specific issue.
Okay, so
we can also work with if families have an attorney that they're comfortable with, but the attorney can't do this.
Right.
We can sort of consult with the attorney on what to do with you. We can do that as well. We don't have to replace an attorney that you have a long-term relationship with.
Okay.
Sort of
And you're in Newton?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Good.
now we're on Zoom.
Yeah, we'll contact you, right?
Yeah.
Which
Now
is
it
so,
doesn't matter.
yeah, because we're in Methuen, so not that far from, so that'd be great. We'll contact you separately. Thank you.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Very good. Very helpful for us.
Yes.
If anybody needs any more contact information, just email me, because my email's on all the flyers and I can get you that contact information. I think we're going to have to wrap it up because
Oh, yeah.
finish now at 7:30.
Right.
But if you have just a lingering question, you can email it to me and I can forward it to Dawn or to Joan or to Audrey, and I'm sure that they would be happy to answer it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. That was great.
Thank you for
That was great.
listening.
I want to thank Dawn Friedman and Audrey Zabin and Joan Katz, so graciously giving of their time and preparing for all of these programs. And Joan, it was wonderful to have you and to work with you on this program. Countless hours to prepare for all of this. And thank you to Sean Sander, our tech expert. Our last session will be Tuesday evening, February 23rd at 6:15, entitled "The Rehab Says My Husband's Medicare Coverage Ends Tomorrow, but He Can't Come Home. Where do I start and when there isn't enough time to plan?" So please join us.
That's an easy one.
I thought you'd like that one.
So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. Again, thank you to Benchmark for underwriting the series. And thank you really, Dawn and Audrey and Joan, for tonight. Thank you so much for all your wisdom and your expertise. And we'll see you
Tracy, thank you for your leadership on this.
And getting the word out. So an old friend found me. Through the globe.
anyone anyone who has any questions, just email me and I'll forward it to the right person, all right?